You are now listening to the Fighting Back Podcast, and here's your host, Jessica Travis. Welcome back to a brand new episode of the Fighting Back Podcast. This is a Sidebar episode. My name is Patricio, aka Rocky, and this is attorney Jessica Travis. How you doing, Jessica?
Good.
We are back, and I'm loving the momentum of our episodes this season. We just wrapped up an episode with attorney Oscar Salgado, and we were talking about how injunctions, like the procedures, more details, and I'm excited how we're going to do this because now we're jumping into stand your ground.
Stand your ground.
I have a lot of questions because, stand your ground got a lot of what's the word I'm looking for? Popularity after George Zimmerman, right?
Yes.
So a lot of people use the term stand your ground, but I feel like they're using it loosely. Give us an actual meaning of what stand your ground actually means.
So stand your ground essentially means that a person is immune from prosecution if they're justified in using force.
Justified in using force.
Yes.
Okay, so either a weapon of some sort against an individual, right?
So force is actually defined in two different ways in the stand your ground statutes.
Okay.
So they define force specifically as non-deadly force, which is force that can't kill someone. So we're talking about punching, slapping, pushing, doing those things that somebody's not going to die as a result of the force.
If I were to put someone in a sleeper hold, kind of like to subdue them, would that be considered non-deadly force?
So the legal answer always is, it depends.
It depends. All right.
But non-deadly force is, the definition is really force that's not going to cause death or great bodily harm. Deadly force is force that could cause death or great bodily harm. So with that, we're really talking about when somebody uses a knife or a gun or some other type of weapon that can cause death or great bodily harm.
Okay.
That's when we're talking about deadly force. So when we're talking about stand your ground, a lot of times they do differentiate in the statutes whether somebody is using non-deadly force or deadly force.
Gotcha. So, and typically, you utilizing stand your ground when someone's protecting their home or either someone just like confronting them or they're feeling like they're in danger, right?
Yeah, so with stand your ground, there's actually 4 separate statutes that deal with stand your ground. The first statute really just says that it lays out the general groundwork that a person is immune from prosecution if they're justified in using force. And that talks about the immunity, right? So that makes a difference between self-defense, which is a defense, and immunity, which is the prosecution is not allowed to go forward with a case, right?
Oh, I thought standing your ground was like a part of like self-defense.
No. So stand your ground, that was one of the big things, and that's that first statute that really says, hey, listen, this isn't a defense. This isn't something where you have to prove you were defending yourself. A jury has to decide if you've proven your defense or not. With stand your ground, it makes it an immunity. So it says if you're justified under these statutes in using force, the state attorney's office is not allowed to go forward and prosecute you. So that's the first thing that they put up is they say, okay, this is immunity, this isn't a defense. But it cannot apply, and it doesn't apply, if you are having any type of force against a law enforcement officer, right?
Okay.
So we're going to start by saying you can't have stand your ground against a law enforcement officer. It doesn't apply.
Okay.
There may be self-defense arguments. There may be other type of legal arguments when you're interacting with a law enforcement officer, but stand your ground doesn't apply.
So, I mean, the one big word of suggestion, just listen to the police. Cooperate with the police, right?
Cooperate. Be polite. Don't hit them. That's all. So anyways, so then the next statute really goes into defining non-deadly and deadly force.
Okay.
Right? So the next statute really says that with non-deadly force, you're justified in using non-deadly force against someone if you think that conduct is necessary to defend their force. right? So you are allowed to use non-deadly force anytime that you reasonably believe that it's necessary to defend somebody else's force. So when we talk about this, we talk about like meeting force with force.
Okay. I was just going to say like matching energy.
Correct. So if somebody's coming at you with their hands and are trying to put their hands on you, you're allowed to stand your ground and put your hands on them. Right? You don't have a duty to retreat when it comes to non-deadly force, and you have that duty to stand your ground and to meet them.
Okay. That's actually way better insight for me to understand that specific statute. All right, so what's the next one?
So when we're talking about deadly force, it's a little different, right?
Okay.
So with deadly force, you are justified in using deadly force only if you reasonably believe that it's necessary to prevent your death or great bodily harm to yourself or someone else.
So
now our standards raised.
So if someone had like a knife to my throat and then I'm like, well, you know what? I have a knife. I'm going to meet you with that. And then and I stab the guy.
Exactly. So deadly force can be used and is justified if there's another person who is about to kill or do great bodily harm to yourself or to someone else.
Okay.
That's when deadly force can be justified. Or to stop the commission of a forcible felony, and a forcible felony is a list of defined felonies that are essentially robbery and murder and those kind of things. But with deadly force, there is an exception. So we talked about with non-deadly force, there's no duty to retreat, right? You can stand your ground. But with deadly force, you don't have a duty to retreat only if you're not engaged in a criminal activity and you're in a place where you have the right to be.
Okay.
So, for example, if a person has somebody coming at them with death or great bodily harm, but they're in the process, they're engaged in a criminal activity. And a lot of times we see this with they're doing something they're not supposed to be doing. They're selling drugs, they're breaking into a business, something else is going on. So if they're engaged in a criminal activity or they're not in a place where they have a right to be.
So would someone trying to steal a carjacking? Like if someone's trying at gunpoint, they're trying to take my car. Let's say I have my weapons permit and they're coming at me. I have the right to defend myself or right to stand my ground.
So remember, we're talking about the person reacting, right? That is whether or not that person reacting has a duty to retreat.
Ah, okay.
So you don't have a duty to retreat unless you're involved in a criminal activity or you're not in a place where you have the right to be.
Okay. All right, that's clear.
So that's your duty to retreat section when it comes to deadly force.
Gotcha.
Now, things get a little different when it comes to the house.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Okay, because I don't want anyone coming into my house.
Well, a person that's in their house does not have a duty to retreat. They can meet force with force no matter what. So if somebody is coming at them, again, into their home with hands, they have the right to meet that force. If they have somebody coming in there with a gun or a knife, they have the right to defend themselves and they don't have a duty to retreat at all when you're in your home.
So we see a lot of this terminology being thrown around in the movies when someone enters a home and, I have the right to defend myself. And then they start, fighting back or shooting back.
And they do.
And so if someone's coming into my house, guns a-blazing, I have the right to stand my ground and defend my home.
Absolutely. And this isn't a complete 100% right. Like everything else in the law, there are exceptions. So there are exceptions when there are injunctions in place, when there's child custody disputes, there's law enforcement involved. So there are exceptions to this idea that if you're in your home, you don't have a duty to retreat and can just go guns blazing. There are exceptions. But generally, when we're talking about it, that statute really does say the castle doctrine. Your home is your castle. You have the duty, you have the right to defend it and not have to retreat.
All right, cool. And what is the final one on this one?
So the final statute really has to do with defense of property. And so you do have the right to use non-deadly force to protect your property, your personal property, your vehicle, things like that. So the law really does says that you are justified in using non-deadly force. So again, coming at with hands to prevent somebody from taking your property, taking something that doesn't belong to you.
And I want to bring a little clarification because there will be some people that say, well, my home is my property, but like that kind of extends out to other things as well. So can you like clarify a little bit more in regards to standing your ground in regards to property?
Yeah, so we really, when we talk about property in the legal sense, we really talk about two property. We talk about real property, which is a house, something that is attached to the ground. That's one type of property, is real property. And then the other type is personal property. And that's really anything that's not a house, anything that's not attached to the ground.
Okay.
That can be any of your belongings, your car, any of that.
Pets, right?
Correct. Pets also fall under personal property.
So let's say someone is trying to take my dog.
Yep.
So I have the ability to stand my right at that point if they're trying to take or cause harm to my property.
And use non-deadly force, absolutely.
Okay.
So you can be justified in using deadly force, but only if it's to prevent the imminent commission of a forcible felony.
Okay.
So if somebody is committing a forcible felony, which is what we consider one of those really big, violent felonies, then you can be justified in using deadly force to protect your property. But generally, you're only going to be justified in using non-deadly force to prevent somebody from taking personal property, things like that.
So hypothetical, I'm just going to throw this out there to see if this falls into that category. If I see someone trying to put my house on fire, set my house afire,
mm-hmm.
and they're spilling all the gas, they're about to throw the match and everything,
mm-hmm.
I have the right to deadly force at that point, right? Since they're going to cause.
So that wouldn't be commission of a forcible felony.
Okay.
You would have the right to non-deadly force.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Because I'm thinking like a few steps ahead, like, oh, they're committing arson in a sense, but that doesn't fall into that category, does it? Okay. All right. Look, you see, I get to learn stuff too on this podcast, and I love that. So what's the procedure when it comes to stand your ground?
Yeah, so like we talked about in the beginning, because this is immunity and this isn't self-defense and this isn't a defense, what happens is the defense files a motion. And once the defense files a motion that's facially sufficient, that says, these are what happened, I was immune from prosecution, this was justifiable, and here's why. As soon as that facially sufficient motion is filed, now the burden's on the state. So now the state has the burden to prove that the force was not justified, that it did not fall under stand your ground, that the state is allowed to prosecute the person. So now that the burden is on the state, once that motion is filed, there's a hearing that's scheduled. And there's an evidentiary hearing. Witnesses come in and testify and talk about what happened and how it all went down. And then the judge makes the decision as to whether the state has met the burden, whether the state is allowed to prosecute this person.
Okay. That means that you make it sound so much easier now. So much, it's a lot more understandable. And again, thank you for clarifying that, because right now you've answered so many questions on my end. And if you have any questions in regards to your case, 407-344-4837, go to fightallow.com, check out all our fields of practice.
And I will tell you,
sorry,
I didn't mean to interrupt, but I do want to tell you, stand your ground, it's easy to kind of talk about the basics of it.
Mm-hmm.
But it is a really complicated law and area of law, and a lot of it's very fact dependent. So I work with our attorneys very closely on these stand your ground cases to really make sure that we're delving into the specific facts of what happened. So one of our attorney, Bridget Williams, she is an amazing attorney. I have worked with her very closely on some stand your ground cases in which the facts, what happened, and how we can use these statutes to show that the person has immunity is really important.
Awesome. And we're actually getting to talk with Bridget to go a little bit more in depth on a couple of her cases on our next episode.
Absolutely.
So yeah, stay tuned. Check us out. Go to fightallow.com. Go to the podcast page. Check out all our previous episodes. Go to any podcast platform, whether it's iHeart, iTunes, Apple Podcasts, or a Spreaker, Spotify. We're all over the place. Check us out. And thank you so much for listening. Have a great day. Thank you so much for listening. If you found this episode helpful or informative, don't forget to follow us on social media and share this podcast with your friends. Like, follow, subscribe so you never miss a show, and help others know their rights by spreading the word. Your support helps us keep fighting back. The information provided in the Fight It Back podcast is for general informational purposes only and is not intended as legal advice. Every case is unique and should be reviewed by a qualified attorney who can provide guidance based on the specific facts and circumstances of your case. Listening to this podcast does not create an attorney-client relationship with Fight Law or any of its attorneys. If you are facing any legal issue, we strongly encourage you to consult with a licensed attorney directly.